Yeah. Oh, got him. Spider thing. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. You know, I when I was a kid, I mostly watched the 1990s Spider-Man animated TV series. You know, that's what really got me hooked on Spider-Man. But I have seen a couple of other like Spider-Man TV shows. I was not really tuned in for the Spectacular Spider-Man series, even though I wish I was. And in fact, I might want to just watch that series sometime because it seems like it's really good. I also watched a little bit of the 1967 Spider-Man animated series. You know, the one with the Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. And man, that show was some weird stuff. It was really funny, like not on purpose, you know. Like there was an episode with Dr. Octopus, and his whole plan was like, I have designed this super nuke that will destroy the world, and that was his whole thing. I was like, oh wow, he's gonna blow it all up. You know, like, oh no. And of course, where would we be without the two Spider-Men pointing at each other? Which, by the way, was, I think one of them was Mysterio. I think that was an episode where he was, like, encountered Mysterio. And also, where would we be without the Me and the Boys meme with Rhino, Vulture, Electro, and the Green Goblin all standing there for a group photo? You love to see it. But on the other side of that, after the 1994 Spider-Man series, I'd like watched all of that show that there was to watch, and I was disappointed that there wasn't more Spider-Man for me to see. You know, I guess I did all the Spider-Man things, and eventually I found Spider-Man Unlimited in the like early 2000s show, which apparently I learned several years later was like the counterpart to Batman Beyond, where Terry McGinnis is now Batman, except in this Spider-Man movie, it's like Peter Parker's still Spider-Man, but it's a weird timeline where like his spider suit is made of nanobots, and he's on a planet with like anthropomorphized, like basically he's on a planet of furry people where humans are an underclass. Like the humans are a racial underclass, and the furry people are the racial overclass. And there's this one furry person that has the hots for him because he's a human, but he dresses like a spider, and he behaves like a spider. And it's like Spider-Man is gallivanting around with the human resistance on that planet, which is kind of weird because it involves J. Jonah Jameson's son, who's an astronaut. It was a really, really weird, kind of zany show. It had a cool art style, though. That show was quite weird. But I enjoyed it because it was Spider-Man. And young me was all into the Spider-Man shit. I'm still into Spider-Man as a superhero. I get like really invested in the Spider-Man stories, and there's a good reason for that, and I think it's a reason that a lot of people get invested in Spider-Man media. It's because Spider-Man is a proletarian superhero who deals with, well, proletarian supervillain fight stuff, and you know, this is me getting very theory-brained, and people kind of have the right to roll their eyes because, oh no, he's talking about the communisms again. A lot of superheroes, it feels like, are abstracted to the level that you no longer understand the context that they're living in, right? You know, the superhero is almost so removed from personhood that they become a god of sorts. And that can be done well. In fact, I think Zack Snyder is one of the best directors when it comes to this. That, you know, he views the superheroes in his movies very much just to be like the modern embodiments of the Greek god kind of archetype, and like he really leans into it with the photography styles that he uses and the framing in his movies and all that. It's very cool, I think. Very stylized, very artistically minded, I think. Like they take up the whole frame, even just something as simple as that. But the flip side is that they don't feel like people anymore. They sort of cease to be these regular humans who have relatable parts of their own lives that you can look at and identify with. You can say like, oh, I've experienced that before. With superheroes, that's not usually there as much. Like Bruce Wayne. Yeah, he's a guy, but he's ultra rich. Clark Kent is a almost literal god of a human being who's like, we only spend a minimal amount of time looking at his personal life as a human. And in fact, when we do focus on it, it's, it makes him even better of a character, I think, because it personalizes him. The Death of Superman, the movie, I think, was one of the greatest examples of this. With Spider-Man, you see as much of him as Peter Parker as you do of him as Spider-Man. And when he's Spider-Man, he still feels like a human being. He has super strength, he can crawl on walls, he can swing from webs and all that. But he still cracks jokes. He talks like he's a regular human being. He gets beat up, he's vulnerable, and sometimes it sucks to see him lose, but I think that it strengthens his character overall, because, like, yeah, I've had a shitty day before. Maybe I've never been curb stomped by a guy dressed as a rhino. I've never been thrown off a roof by, like, a dude that has electricity coursing through his veins or whatever. And I've never been assaulted by a weird, like, sentient black goop. But, I've experienced failure before, and I've experienced the whole feeling of, like, feeling like there's nothing I could do to salvage a really bad situation and still feeling at fault. And Spider-Man just keeps on going. And as Peter Parker, he's like, as Peter Parker, he's not really the most well-adjusted human being, which I think makes him resonate so well, because, like, nobody's that well-adjusted in the first place. Even the most well-adjusted people, like, have massive insecurities that they're just kind of hiding. Like, the platonic ideal of a human that we all think of when we think of a well-adjusted person doesn't actually exist. And I think it's a very realistic depiction of Spider-Man when you don't depict him as somebody who is socially well-adjusted in every single possible context. He fucks up, he makes mistakes in regular human situations. His friendships are very flawed, and but he still has them, and he has people who are important to him. And you can tell that he worries a lot about doing right by them. It feels very personal. Spider-Man stories very often feel personal. Even the highest stakes part of the Spider-Man cartoon, the last episode, was Spider-Man unites with other Spider-Men from other universes to take down Spider Carnage. That's one of the most personal and, like, atomized, down to the smallest possible level storylines, because you figure out that this isn't just Spider Carnage. This is Peter Parker under there, bonded with the Carnage symbiote. And at the end, he finally has a reckoning with Uncle Ben, and it's genuinely very sad. But with every other superhero, I feel like that sort of storytelling, that quality of storytelling, is very rare. Particularly superheroes that have superpowers. The less superpower a superhero has, the more the better it is for depicting them as a, like, flawed person that you can actually impose yourself over and like feel the things that they go through. Because when you see, like, even when you see Superman going through some stuff, you're like, yeah, I mean, he can still be Superman. Like, it's easy for him to, like, fly and see things that he is a Superman. He does so many things that, an average person can't. I guess it would be like the difference between a superhero that you look up to and are in awe of versus a superhero that you can look at and sort of put yourself in their shoes. And I think each of those tropes is actually very valuable in the comic book media space. But goddamn, do I like Spider-Man because Peter Parker in the 1990s show, Peter Parker's a broke-ass college student. And there's quite a few people from the 1990s, 1980s, whatever time period on up till now that can relate to that archetype. And because of the whole secret identity, he can't like be Spider-Man when he's not in the costume. He just has to be Peter Parker. What a show that was, man. What a show that was. And another thing, this is circling back to the beginning of this, the proletarian villains, is that Spider-Man, more than a lot of other comic book series, except for maybe Batman, but I haven't read as much Batman, made me feel sympathy for the villains that Spider-Man fights against. Even the likes of Dr. Octopus, when Dr. Octopus is doing some heinous shit, some diabolical shit, you understand that there's a man under there who's being exploited and controlled by that, that harness with the mechanical arms and whatever. And sometimes in Spider-Man media like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, the character beyond the supervillain shines through, and you understand that like these aren't just these aren't bad people doing the bad things because they're bad. These are people who are genuinely in need of help and like in a very dark place in their life. In fact, basically the entire game of Spider-Man PlayStation 4 kind of revolved around that. Dr. Octavius' descent into madness as he was trying to solve very real problems that exist in the world, and trying to help the other supervillains who weren't doing bad things just because they're bad, were doing them because they needed money to help fix like health issues that they had. So I'll always remember that stuff very fondly.